Hey guys, what is up? So I am super excited. I have been wanting to jam with this guy for a very long time. I have been watching pretty much everything that he does online. And if you guys have been following me for a while, I don't follow a lot of people for obvious reasons, but this is one of the guys that I don't know how I came across him, but over the last couple of years I've been following his content because I don't find that I align with a lot of the types of content that a lot of people put out, but this guy was an exception. And so I started watching him. I joined his membership. I enjoy his Wednesday lives almost every single Wednesday that I can make it. And I just try to absorb all of this amazing information from this guy because he is one of the best that I've seen to be able to pull off DM conversation strategies. And I know I myself have implemented some of the strategies that I have learned from him and have been passing it along to my people, and it just works. And so, in my circle, we like to say that we like to gift people to people. And so today I would like to gift you guys Jason C. Fox because he has been an amazing and he doesn't even know this, but this is actually the first time that we've ever actually talked, which is really exciting. And so I would love to gift you guys this conversation today because I know that a lot of things are going to be changing going into 2024. You guys have probably already noticed a lot of the stuff that worked in 2021, worked in 2022, not so much in 2023. And so I think we're gonna have a value packed conversation here that a lot of you guys are gonna get a lot of value out of. And Jason, if you want to introduce yourself to my audience, because I probably didn't do you justice, but tell everyone a little bit about, who you are, what you've been doing over the last several years, and what are you most excited about jamming today?
Yeah, cool. So, it's funny, like I would have introduced myself a lot differently like a week ago, but yesterday I told a story on Facebook and my email list, and it really resonated with people. And it's funny enough, it's actually true, but it's like a little misleading. It's a story of like when I was first getting started in business. I kind of made some money, like it was not really much. Like I think I had like 20K in the bank maybe. And I was like, I want to get an apartment for my wife and I, like rent an apartment, not buy anything. 20K couldn't get much. So I rented this like luxury apartment, had a rooftop pool, had like a gym upstairs, had a boxing bag up there. It was like beautiful, so nice. But it was weirdly like $200 to $300 cheaper than every other apartment out there. And I was like kind of confused. I was like, well, why is it so much cheaper? And lo and behold, when we moved into it, we discovered that it was on top of a brothel. So a brothel is a prostitution like house, I guess. And I told my wife, and like I was like, oh no, she's gonna kill me, but it was okay in the end. And that's kind of yeah. And it's like from there, I learned that like you need to be a lot more cautious with the way that you handle once you start having money. And growing. But look, we've been doing this for about 7 years now. We started with an agency, like the old SMMA, like that was our thing. Fell out of love with SMMA because, there was this thing, and I'm sure you can relate to this. I mean, I know you can, is that when you're working with people on like done for you type services, is that it's typically expensive, right? We were charging $2 to $5 grand a month. 99% of the world probably can't afford that, right? And so we were only working with companies that were doing 20, 30, $250 million a year. And cool, we're making them more money, but like what? We're going to get like help an executive get another Mercedes? Like what were we really doing? I just felt so out of touch with it. And it was reflected in my work, to be honest. Like towards the back end of my like social media agency, the results were down because I just felt so disconnected from it. And that's unfair to my clients and unfair to like myself. So we decided to move away from it and jump into coaching. I launched a coaching program for like $500 because I didn't know high ticket was a thing, for 6 weeks of one-on-one with me. It was crazy. It's crazy. And we made like 10 grand. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And my first few clients like got insane, like probably the best results I've seen, like from, beginner to growing their business. And I just fell in love with like coaching and helping people. And I'm not going to lie, like the money is much better in coaching than agency. I think that like too many people lie about that and say they're in it for the passion. While I love what I do, but the money's better. Let's be real. So more recently we've, been switching into memberships, testing some things, and Yeah, I hope that gives some context for you.
Absolutely. And it's so funny because, oh God, we are so much aligned, Jason,
Mhm.
because that is one of the reasons why I shifted as well, because I was working and no knock on anyone, because I've worked with a lot of amazing people, but I kind of had the same thing. I'm like, I'm just helping another 2 Comma Club award winner get another 2 Comma Club award.
Yeah.
And at the same time that I had started my agency, once I had booked that out, I had a coaching program. And, I was getting people who were coming in and never really having made money for themselves. And after that first client was actually able to leave their job, I was like, this is so much more satisfying than seeing, a millionaire make another extra million or something like that. So that's so funny that you mentioned that
Mhm.
story, because it is one of the reasons why I do what I do. And that is why, I decided to launch the $7 program, which everyone in the world told me was the worst idea ever, because this was back in 2018 when everyone was pushing high ticket, high ticket, high ticket. And I don't know if you know this story, but, I was the butt of a lot of coaching groups back then, because people were sending me screenshots of this
I
um
actually remember I've seen some stuff like that. Yeah.
screenshots of like saying no one will ever pay this woman any like money, because like and who's laughing now almost $3 million later.
Yeah.
But and I say that because of the conversation that I want to have with you right now, because that's one of the things that I've noticed is you and I, we don't have the biggest followings, right? We have
No.
very, very small followings.
Don't hire us for Instagram growth courses.
No,
That's
do
all we'll
not.
say.
But you and I mean, we both do really, really well on a yearly basis.
Mhm.
And I want to have the conversation because so many people who are watching this right now get caught up in the followers. They get caught up in, well, I don't have a big following. I don't have this. I don't have that. And, I made my first, I want to say my first $1,000 using Instagram with only having like less than 100 people like on my like actual thing. And so I know you have a ton of experience in that. And so do you want to like talk a little bit about followers versus audience?
Yeah, that's such a good thing. And I actually think what's more impressive for you, because you've done more lower ticket, right? Like you have the $7 and then you have your own, you have a higher ticket like
See,
membership
that's
type.
that's the misconception. People think I do a lot of low
Yeah.
ticket. I actually don't. I just have a low ticket offer, but that's the thing that people
Yeah.
quote know me for. But I just have two offers like you. Well, I think you guys like last time I
We
think I
have
was talking
two. We're in a transition period. We'll talk about that after.
well,
I
yeah, I
need
have a
some
seven
advice on
dollar
it at the
I have
moment.
a $7 a month and I have $1,000 a month. And it's one of the best moves I could have made.
Oh, without a doubt, without it. I think that like so I actually made a post about it the other day, is like growing in quotes, because I can't give growth advice. Is like my total collective audience is maybe 10K at the most, and like people think, oh, that's fantastic, like it's nothing, right? Considering on Facebook is that I've been doing it for 7 years, and Facebook, a majority of the people who I'm connected with, I added personally, or like my VA or did that, right? Like manually growing an audience is like there's a different, like, growth on any platform is very simple, is you need to demonstrate your competence over and over again, and not enough people do that. Is they just like post these like stories and stuff work, but demonstrate that you know what the hell you're talking about, right? Like you are someone, I was on the phone with someone the other day and I mentioned you and they go, oh yeah, the $7 a month ads girl, and I was like, yeah, that's her, right? And I think that like being known for something very specific is really important. And that's actually probably where I'm missing at the moment, because I'm pulling away from what I was originally known for. And again, we'll get into that. But being known for something very specific and then being able to charge a great amount and having a buying audience versus followers, right? Is that we're very efficient. Is that for 8,000 people, right? I'm looking at your profile. You've got 8,400 followers on Facebook. I've got like literally the same, I think. And we've been able to get multiple millions out of it because they're all buying, because we're constantly demonstrating our competence. But not only that, is that we're demonstrating why work with me versus other people, is that everyone's a regurgitated, and like, it's funny, I'm wearing this hat, but I'm going to say it, is like everyone's a regurgitated Hormozy at this point, right? I'm wearing the hat because I was supposed to get a haircut, but the barber canceled. So now I'm a hat person. So everyone's regurgitating all of that stuff, whereas you are showcasing your personality all the time, right? And I'm doing the same. I think that too many people miss that. It's like personality and competence are the way that you can grow into a buying audience, and people will buy from you. That simple.
Yeah. I just recently had a Phoenix event and we sold it out with one single Facebook post. Like over 50 seats. I think we sold we were supposed to sell 50. And we
Yeah.
ended up selling 63, but it was with a single Facebook post. And that's what I try to explain to, my audience, is that it's not about like, I am not the best ads person. Like, I am hands down not the best ads person. I'm probably not even the 500th best ads person that's marketing online. But the reason that people see me as this ads expert, which I don't consider myself an expert, but the reason is because I've consistently shown up doing the stuff, showing people really cool things, because so many people are so afraid to show people behind the scenes. Like, one of my favorite strategies, one of my good friends, Sam Ocean, he's one of my dear friends that I've known for oh my god, almost 5 years now. He's actually one of the first people I met whenever I first started. And one of his things he says all the time: build in public, build
Yeah.
in public. And I don't understand why so many people, because to me it just can't, like, that was just the obvious thing to do. And
Yeah.
so why do you think that so many people are afraid to just go online, show people what they can do, and be themselves? What do you think is the block there?
Well, it's the problem of social media is that build in public is like great, but people want to pretend that they're here when they're here, right? Like I always think is that um building in public is really, really important if you're really honest about it. Like I talk
Mm-hmm.
about it. Like we aren't the 250K a month, the 200K a month business that's crushing it with high ticket sales. Like that's not it at all, right? I think that being real is often seen as a weakness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, I think the build in public thing is very difficult under 10K a month. I think that there can be like you can talk about it and document the journey, but like you will struggle to get clients if you're just saying like I'm just starting out, I'm looking for my first case study. Like that's difficult. I think that you can do that and then in privately tell people and be honest about it. But I think the build in public thing is such a great example. And I've been doing it for 7 years. Like people have been following me for so long. They say, Jason, I've seen you from, making your first 10K day to, like 10K month to like that being an average day. It's like such a difference. I really like that concept. And it's actually funny because that's a big concept on Twitter more than Facebook. Not a lot of people talk about it on Facebook, from what I've seen. But it's just so important. It brings people along the journey and like makes them I
Invested into it a
invested.
little bit.
Yeah. Like there was this person last week who I've never because I'm actually taking my sales calls at the moment because we only enroll like 5 to 10 people a month because I don't need to. And why would I pay someone for that? And this person said, I've been following you for like 4 years. I know this about you, this and that. And I'm like, I've never seen your name in my life. Right. And not to be rude, not to be like, I don't care, but like, that's just because they haven't liked or engaged with my stuff. But that's how deep and connected people are. And they're like, it's an honor to be on this call with you. And then they gave me $8,000 just right then. Right. Like, that's just the way it rolls. So it really is an important concept that not a lot of people talk about.
I just had a coaching call and I actually told my student, I was like, I'm going to work this into a piece of content soon. And here it is.
Mm-hmm.
So she was trying to figure out, so I don't know how much you know about my strategy, but I teach these $5 ads called power content, right? 3 to 5 minute videos, and just teach something, reveal something, like just be yourself. And she's like, well, I don't know what to do. She's like, I just took on, because I like to give my students clients, because I don't do the agency stuff anymore. So when students are learning, I always make an announcement, hey, I've got a student in training. And so she had just taken on 2 brand new clients. And I was like, well, tell me about like each of those clients. And the first one, she was like, well, we're running a webinar and I launched one of her retargeting ads and she got $3,500. She sold her 35. I was like, go online. And here's how I launched one ad and got $3,500 for a client with a single $5 ad. And then I was like, well, tell me about the other one. And she was, this was the kicker. You're going to laugh at this. She's like, well, I just launched a power offer ad for $5. And we only spent 6, and she's got 22 calls on her calendar. I'm like, you were like sitting on like content gold. And so it's little examples like that that people just don't think that that's really great content. To me, I'm always like, any conversation I have, I know I'm gonna like turn it into content in some sort of way. Like
instantly. Yeah.
yeah, like
Like
that is such great results. Even though she just started, like people being like, holy crap, this girl just started and got that good of a result this early on. And those are like little golden nuggets that I don't think a lot of people give themselves credit for. Like so many people that I talk to, I'm like, God, they are so good. If they would just hit record or just, go live, I was like, oh, the world would see how really amazing they are.
it's so true. And like I think, again, going back to my original point, it's like that's the problem with social media. It's like so front. It's like the fake this, the fake that. Like it's that's why I think that like Instagram's probably the worst example of it. I deleted it off my phone because I just like it's so toxic in that way. I think that Twitter and Facebook are much better platforms for business. Is so I think it was last weekend or the weekend before. Well, last weekend we did a 6K launch of a low ticket product, right? So 6K, you and I, our world, not that much, right? But to 6K, that's life changing for some people. There was 2 payments that processed 10 minutes before I made the post, and I already had the screenshot, so I didn't even include them. And I just made the post on the Monday, right? Sunday closed, Monday done, and I make the post about that 6K in a weekend. Hundreds of comments, people with hundreds of thousands of followers commenting on it as well, saying, man, that's a great strategy. How can I learn more? Created an offer about it and sold it, right? Like it's speed of this stuff as well. Like I actually am in fairness like listening to Hormozi's $100 million leads. Just I think it reiterates the frameworks that we already know. And he talked about it in content. He goes like, your recent past, your long past, medium past, and then made up. That's your content strategy right there. So think about the conversation that you had with someone last week. And like this right here can be a content piece. Is like, think about those conversations and what you've done and what you've achieved and the things that came up, and then use that within your content, because then people will buy into you and your way of thinking. I think that that's really important. And again, going back, like hats off to you, is like a lot of people buy into your way of thinking with the $5 a day ad strategy, because it's just so unique. So yeah, that's what I think it is. And you're so right. Like that client should be posting about it right away.
Oh my gosh. I know. And I see so many people that are just falling into this trap of, well, no one's going to believe me or anything like this. And it's just like, just go do the content. Like I got made fun of, like, like you saw it, like I got made fun of like, 4 or 5 years ago,
Yeah.
whenever I first released my $7 offer, and, it kind of stung a little bit, but looking back now, and I remember one of the very specific people that posted the screenshot and was firing shots at me is now one of my members of my $7 program. And I laughed whenever he paid. I was like, I showed Christine, I was like, remember this guy? And so and that's why I just tell people, I was like, just no one is going to care. Like they're going to forget what you do on a day-to-day basis. So
yep.
I would love to transition the conversation into, because we touched on it a little bit. What are some of the things that you're seeing as far as online marketing work over the last several years, and then just kind of starting to kind of see it not work as well in 2023? And where do you think that the online marketing space is going to see more of in 2024?
Yeah, so this is good. I think that, and this is not like the proclamation of something dying, but I think that high ticket in general, I think it needs to change, but I also think it is changing. So outside of like a couple of clients, I've not sold much above $1,000 in the last 3 to 6 months, right? The $1,000 initial, right? There's some people, a majority of them are paying over 10 grand. It's just over time. I think that a shift is important as well, because at the end of the day, we're just making up these prices, right? Like 9,000 or 5,000.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because I think that all the time. I'm like, where did you get that? Like, yeah.
Well, we'll remember, so it was 997, like that was Ty Lopez. And then Sam Ovens came out with the 1997 and then up level at 5,800. And then 3,200 was the mastermind. We just pulled all this stuff from our ass, right? Like it's all made up. And the 5,800, it's like, the zero fulfillment, like there's no extra cost per new member. So why is it so expensive? And I get it. I think that there is a need for high ticket, and I think there is a need for people to fork out money so they actually hold their feet to the fire. I think investing in yourself is really important. But I just think the high ticket in general needs to shift, and I think it has shifted. A lot of people are talking about MRR. I honestly think that it's gonna be overblown, and people are gonna like figure out some crap and like ruin it for us, the guys who like you and I have been doing it well for a long time. But like, I think that more so membership and paying for access, because I think one of the biggest shifts in technology over the last 10, 15 years was when, and I remember I was quite young, is when Adobe stopped charging once off for Photoshop and went to membership. That started everything. I don't care what anyone says. That was the first SaaS that went into non-ownership, because we don't own anything today, right? Like nothing. Your cars, your houses, all of it. There's no ownership. It's more like paying for access, right? It's like the Netflix model. And I think that that is the model that we will see happen more often, which makes us have to improve, because every time that the day before your credit card gets charged, you charge your client your credit card, you're basically having to sell them why they should pay you again next month. Otherwise, they're like, I don't want to pay this. Like, I didn't use it, blah, blah, blah. It's this whole big thing. So I think that it raises the standard, but it also reduces the barrier to entry. So there will be some crappier people come into this play, but it raises the standard if you want to win. Because I've had a client, they actually just paid yesterday. That is their 68th payment of $1,500 to me. $1,500 a month for like 5 years, right? So they've paid well over six figures. And that is the standard that we need to kind of set, right? And they don't even blink at it. Like sometimes it'll be a couple days late or whatever, but they don't even blink. It's always paid. So I think that that is kind of the way that we're going, at least in my hopes and what I've seen in my network.
So I'd like to expand on that. Where do you feel like most people are when they're putting out content and they're expecting high, like they want to charge high ticket? Where do you think most people are going wrong when they're putting out a high ticket product and then they're getting discouraged why people either aren't buying or why people aren't staying?
Yeah. I think that the not buying thing is, I just think that commonly there's a lot of competition, right? So I think that, gone are the days of like, buy or die on the sales call. The fast action bonus BS
Oh yeah.
used to do. It's $5,000 today or $6,000 tomorrow. Like, come on, guys. I think that obviously that shifted. But I think that the need for retention is really important, and not a lot of people do that, is because it used to be a 12-week coaching program. After that, see you never, right? You can stay in the Facebook group, you can show up to calls, like I don't give a crap, right? I think that the need for retention is bigger these days. And I also think that it's a good thing to have in a client coach relationship. I really believe that like having one clear mentor for something and some period is important. I think you should have multiple mentors. Like I say, there's this one client who's coming up for renewal soon, who I will tell them not to renew because they're in a stage where they need to solve problems that I'm not equipped for right now. And I think that that's something that more people should be doing, is like getting into the female coaching space calls it containers. And I actually quite like that, is like getting into a container and like staying in that container for as long as it serves you. And then when you need to move on to something else, is moving to a different container that can solve that specific problem. Yeah, I mean, that kind of roundabout answered the question, if you will.
Yeah. One of the other shifts that I am seeing, and I love it because it's what you and I do best, is kind of people moving away from the traditional funnel.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm loving it because I have always been a huge fan. I've had my two-step method that's literally what built my business. And it still is the thing that keeps my business full today. And I'm loving it because it's almost making people like you and I who love having those conversations, giving us an edge over everyone, because we are getting to the conversation so much faster than people are moving. Because even I'm seeing it with my private clients. We're trying to figure out ways, and I'll tell you what we're doing with one of your strategies to actually fill the whole of the funnel. but I'm finding that people aren't moving through those webinar funnels, their VSL funnels, like they used to.
Yeah.
And so we're having to figure out a way, and a lot of people don't like that. And I see that as opportunity for so many people who are willing to, have the messenger conversations or have the phone conversations, because I think now, because of what you said earlier, because of the saturation, because of all of the people who've been burned by so many programs, they want that human element before they're actually buying. And so, one of my favorite strategies is actually, and I think I've told you about it before, is literally doing some of those two-step contents and then just running a $5 ad to some of those story elements, like the screenshots, and just running a $5 ad to people who've become a lead. Like, one for in particular, I had an agency client who I've had forever, and so she's one of my only ones that I do now for fun. People had stopped moving through her webinar. Like, she was making six figures consistently for like 2.5 years, right? And then all of a sudden, we noticed she was still getting the same amount of leads, but people weren't moving through the funnel. And so I was like, send me your last 3 screenshots and do these 2 Reels videos where you're giving away that PDF that you talk about in your webinar. We ran $5 ads to them over one weekend, over 200 triage calls booked. We recovered all of those leads that we had already paid for. And I showed the she wasn't even a call setter, she was just a VA. I was like, here's a script to transition these people into a call. Boom, over 200 booked calls by just utilizing a simple $5 ad and a simple DM script, and moved people through. And so I think that is going to be, like, being able to do that very well, I think is going to be key in 2024.
Without a doubt. And I call it like a no leak funnel, right? Is that I do not miss a single lead. And you probably know, is like, we're friends, but on Facebook, my setter might message you to buy something. I'm like, I apologize. It's not, if it's me, I'll say it, but we just don't miss anyone. So what we do is every single day is we put out lead magnets all over the place. And a lot of people ask me, why don't you run ads? Well, one, I've been completely banned, like, everywhere. That's an issue, but we can get around that. We're navigating that. But 2 is we just do not miss anyone anyway, and we get enough lead flow that it would probably ruin our system at the moment. We're definitely planning on doing it in 2024. So someone comes in, let's just say they watch it, they get a lead magnet. They usually get that lead magnet from a DM conversation, and then they'll go through, they'll watch it, they'll download the doc. We can actually track in our CRM what they've clicked on, what they've seen, and then we come back in and we'll DM them again. Or if they just get on our email list and they click a link to, like, right now we're running an email workshop. It's like that 5K in a weekend is what we're calling it. It's like how to launch a low ticket and make 5K in a weekend. Is we're doing that. And so I send out an email, everyone who clicks on the link to the actual landing page, I will DM them and say, hey, notice you're interested in this. Like, do you have any questions? And we actually get sales there, because they're like, oh yeah, but I don't have this yet and I don't have that. Like, what do you think? And we answer that, because that is not going to happen on an email conversation. We'll in DMs. Is we do not miss anyone. So as soon as you click a link on my page, you'll probably get a DM and an email. But that's because we know that the conversation is different now. It's like, there's such little trust in the marketplace, is that it's difficult to just go click and buy something. I don't buy anything like over $1,000. I'll need to at least have a DM conversation. Even if it's just like, hey man, like, I just have a question on this. Yeah, cool, no problem. Send me the payment link. I'm the best client you'll ever have. I'm great with that. But I think that, like, that personal connection is really important. And I'm glad that you are doing it with ads too, is because a lot of people just are like, ads, VSL, buy. Like, no, it doesn't work like that.
No, we just run, I call, like, the freebies, like, value bombs. I'm like, just run a 60-second Reels video that promotes the value bomb. Send them, like, and it's really great for people who are just starting out too, because someone who hasn't, taken the time to build their following or whatever, it gives them that quick win. But one of the things too is DM conversations solve a huge problem, right? I jam a lot with Vince Reed, and he always says that people don't buy for one of 2 reasons. One is really easy to overcome. It's, they don't believe it works. Well, testimonials and case studies, all of that will alleviate that. But the second one is even bigger. And this is what you're DM method solves is too, they don't have the certainty that it will work for them. And that's why I think it's a super important element that so many marketers are leaving out of their sales flow, is having that direct conversation. Because really, at the end of the day, that's really one of the only ways that we could actually give someone certainty that it will work for them, is having that conversation.
Yeah, it's like when you build up enough testimonials, is that you have enough leverage for like someone. So if a new prospect comes along, you have a testimonial that fits that prospect's story. But at the end of the day, they still need to be told and explained. Like we had someone who they're a unique snowflake in their business, right? Like they say, when in reality they're not. They're like 10,000 other people that we've worked with. So we just needed though to convey, okay, yeah, we've actually seen this problem and this is one of the ways that we've solved it. Does that make sense? Oh yeah, cool. Like then we can work together. It's very much that trust and that conversation and just a little bit of customization. It's all that's needed. And just having that human conversation is, a lot of people buy from me. And again, going back to what you said at the start, I'm not the best DM or content guy or whatever. Like I am the best at like actually having conversations with you. And people buy from me, they're like, oh, Jason, it feels like you actually care. Well, that's not a strategy. That's just who I am. And that's the way it is. And that is why we're winning, is because it's seen and people are like, you just care and you're just more open and honest. I'm like, that's what this method allows you to do, is have those conversations.
Yeah. So I always tell my students that there's different styles of being able to sell in the DM and being able to move someone from point A to point B. I always tell my students, this is the way that I approach every messenger conversation. And I would love to know how you approach every messenger conversation, because I know there are some people who are listening to this who are struggling to get people across to from that messenger conversation to a booked call. What I always tell people is, every time I get a DM, I'm thinking about, how can I help this person with their most immediate need in the next 10 minutes, and pretend that they just paid me $500 in order to do it, to solve that next immediate problem. And that framework for me going into messenger conversations has never failed me. Now that works for me. What would you tell someone, like if someone's having issues being able to approach DM conversations in a way that can push them to take that next step, like booking a call or buying something?
Yeah, we actually are very aligned with this. I think I made a post a while ago about like value. Like I said, just produce value, bro. And then you commented and said, all I do is produce value and it works for me. And I think that, like it's just banter anyway. It's all good. But like, I think that we align on that a lot. Is you said, how can I solve the problem knowing that they've paid me $500? Is for me, it's actually less than that. It's, how can I solve that? How can I uncover that problem and connect it to a solution that we can provide? Because I think that sometimes a lot of people try to, like, this is where I was going with the give value, is a lot of people try to give value, but giving value in that DM is actually just going to hold them back, because I know that if they got on a call with you or joined your program, you would solve it 10x, right? Versus what you can do in the DM. So for me, it's uncovering that and then moving them to the next logical step so we can further solve that problem. So it's very, very similar in that sense. And it's like a doctor, right? You were just inquiring about we actually have, he's a PhD in relationships. And he's like, man, I suck at DM conversations. I said, all right, well, let's role play this conversation. Imagine you are sitting there and having a therapy session. And I was like, dude, you are so good at DM conversations. Because all he did was just uncover their pain and got them to a point where they're almost in tears and then offered a call. I'm like, that's what it is. It's uncovering the pain and fitting it with a solution that works for them. And obviously, like, I sound very calculated and like I'm not trying to help. I am. That's why I'm doing it, is to uncover their pain and problem. I think that most people just, they either are too human, and I know that sounds weird. They're like friendly. Oh man, that sucks. Like, no, you don't say that. Oh man, I'm sorry that you're dealing with that. What have you tried to fix it? Right? You've got to kind of balance it a little bit. And ultimately you're coming from a place of service always. If you aren't, just don't bother. Like, just don't bother.
Yeah, sometimes when I look at student conversations, because in my $1,000 a month, I always have them like, well, send me your DM conversation so I could actually see how they're
Mhm.
talking to these people. And it's either one of two things. One, they're too robotic. Like
Yeah.
they don't have they're not very conversational. It's just like it's almost like they're almost talking to a bot or following a script.
Hmm.
And I always tell them, I'm like, if someone came in and you met them for coffee and they were describing their problem to you, is that the way that they would describe their problem? And is that what you would actually say back to them, like in a total conversation? And it's just like I just approach DM conversations as if someone would have walked into my office and it's the same conversation. And I think people think that just because the vehicle is different that the conversation changes, and it really doesn't.
Yeah,
The
that's
second
that's so important. Just on that as well, is like I say that with follow-up as well, is that like let's say you're having a conversation, they're replying back and forth every 2 minutes, and let's say you're doing the same thing at a coffee shop, and then suddenly you ask, well, like, how long have you been doing this for? And then they didn't respond. You're in a coffee shop and they're just not responding. What would you say? Would you send them a GIF saying, hey, where are you? No, you would say, like, oh, hey man, like, did that question make sense? Or like, hey, did you get this? Or like you're having a normal conversation. Stop being so uptight about it and think there's some miracle strategy, right? Like it's funny, I give away a DM script like completely for free. Our entire DM script is free. And a lot of people go in there like, this is going to solve all of my problems. It's a 22-page document on how you can build conversations and the frameworks of starting and moving conversations. Everyone's like, oh, but there's no actual like step one, step two. No, because there's not. It just doesn't work that way.
do you have a vanity URL for that we could pimp that?
I don't have it's just jasoncfox.com/DM-script. I need to change that. Yeah. We'll make a better URL for that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, because I know people listening, and then it'll get them into your world, and then they can kind
Yeah.
of see how you do things, because you do it so well. Because I know I get a lot of your freebies, even though I do your membership, I still get all of the freebies and stuff. And
Mhm.
it's so funny because like your person, or either are you, maybe, I don't know, reach out to me on Instagram, and I'm like, I'm just hacking,
Yeah, I
like,
know.
trying to see how
Every
you doing.
time.
No, but it's so good. I don't do that. Just so you know, I don't do that to like very many people. So that's that's a
I
compliment.
appreciate that.
One of the most asked questions that I get from students who are trying to, execute these two-step type strategies is, what is the percentage should they expect people to not respond in Messenger?
Almost 100. Like honestly, like I go in there with like no, like they don't owe you anything. Just because you've given them something for free, they still don't owe you anything. And a lot of people go in there and they're like, they send the resource, but you need to make it easy, because what I always say is the first 5 minutes of a conversation in DMs is them walking their dog with their phone. How can they just respond really quickly? Because otherwise, if they have their phone and their kid knocks over the freaking stove or whatever, they put it down, they're gonna forget. If you ask the question that just said that the response can be yes, no, oh, we haven't done that, then they're more engaged. It's those micro commitments, right? It's just getting them to start. So I think that the response rate is something that we don't often track too much like we do and we have in the past, but just because we know that it's unlikely that someone's going to respond to the first message, so we just keep following up and we offer it in different ways and we make it easy for them to start engaging, right? Like, so our first question, and this is the most powerful thing, and not many people do this with any two-step type post, is like, hey, got your comment, cool if I send the doc here. I don't even need to say that, but they just said yes. Cool, they've said yes to me now. All right, here it is. Curious, are you trying DMs? Not right now. So you're just moving them through to the conversation and just getting micro commitments, and then you can open them up. It's the old, like, I haven't dated in God knows 10 years or something, but it's the old, like, go to the bar, hey, how you doing? Buy a drink, sit down, have a conversation, and you get married 5 years later, right? Like, not getting married the same night. So I think that like response rate is just all about getting micro commitments, and that'll help you so much.
That's really good. So people should just expect like the person just not to respond. So it's normal. And I ask you that question because so many people, get really like, they're like, well, only 60% of people are responding to my DM. I'm like, that's good. Like
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
it's a volume thing, it's like, people, not everyone is going to, I was like, there's either one of two things happening. One, there wasn't enough urgency in what that they needed that resource, or two, they were just saying yes to everything. And it's that's why we call them, like, I think it's you that calls them indirect or direct pitches, right?
That's exactly
It's
right.
indirect. So it's not something that, some people are gonna be like, yes, 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 I want this, but then they're just freebie collecting, right? And then there's some people that will respond to more direct posts, like a specific offer. And but
Yeah.
people get so hurt that people just are ghosting people in the DM, and I'm like, that's a normal thing. It just
Yeah.
happens.
And I look at it like, what's the worst case scenario, right? Is that, so if someone comments on a two-step, they have now commented on a two-step. The worst case scenario is that they will see your next post, because now they've engaged with you. The algorithm will push to your next post. That is the absolute worst thing that can happen from them commenting. The next worst thing is that they respond to your first message and get your resource, but they don't open it. That's fine. More exposure. They'll see you again on the feed. The next best thing is that they will open the freebie, enter their name and email. For me, that's a win enough, right? That's enough wins. I think that a lot of, and I made this mistake early on, I was just talking to my business partner about it, is like, we weren't doing enough of the old school marketing, which is collecting emails and stuff like that. I think that that's really important. Is like, that now is our worst case scenario. The next thing is they respond 2 or 3 times. Cool. Now they'll see more of our posts. They'll respond 5 times. Cool. More posts. They'll respond 6 times and book a call. Great. So your worst case scenario is they see your next post, and that's why your content is so important, that if it resonates with them, they will move on and will continue with me. Is that everyone thinks I'm just DMs and cold DMs. We send 200 DMs a day, not a single one of them's cold, right? Not a single one's cold. And I think that more people need to realize that, is that you have all the leads that you need right now to make a business, to make $1 million business.
That's so good, because I think, did you guys hear what he just said? 200 DMs a day. That's because some people are just like sending, 5 or 10 and then thinking, like, I think one of the biggest takeaways from this conversation that people can have is it really, and Alex Hormozi says this all the time. I'm a huge Hormozi fan as well. Mm-hmm. He says most people don't really have a lead problem. It's just, how many times are you following up, or how many times are you sending messages? Because people think, I always remember the flyer thing, right? When he handed out 500 flyers whenever he should have been handing out 3,000. And it really is like, marketing is really like a huge volume play.
Yeah. And I really get frustrated with people that are like, oh, like, it's like quality over quantity. I'm like, you're just saying that because one piece did really well. They often reference someone like Mr. Beast, right? So outside of the coaching space, a creator, and they're like, oh, he is, he's all about quality, not quantity. He produces one amazing video a week that produces 200 plus reels that other people produce thousands of reels. He's the biggest volume player. It just looks like quality, right? I just think that so many people need more volume, and they're like, oh, but like Netflix and all of these, like Game of Thrones, for example, it's all about quality. There was 8 freaking seasons of it, hour-long episodes, right? Like, volume works in everything, and quantity negates luck. It's that simple. It's like, oh, we like this one. It's like, quantity breeds quality. So just put it out there. Put it out there more times.
Because a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, they don't know what works. And so they need the reps. They need to practice. They need to put out the content. Because even whenever I first started, I went live, every single day for 100 days. I was figuring out what type of content. And then, I always tell people, it's not 90 days to success. It's 90 days to data. Because after 90 days, you have enough data to X out the things that don't work and check off the things that do work. And so the next 90 days, you're actually going to start to see traction, because you're doing more of the things that work. And I know we have just a couple minutes left, and I want to be respectful of your time, but I think that this would probably be the most valuable question that I can end this with. When it comes to content, what is your strategy for putting out the best content in order to actually get people into your world, into, being a warm lead, so that you can follow up with them? What is it that Jason does to put out content?
Yeah. So I think that the biggest thing that a lot of people miss with content is they're like, okay, I talked about the stories at the start and that sort of thing, but you need to actually sit down and think, what do I want my audience to believe in order for them to buy from me? And I think that using extreme examples in the circumstances works better than using my own examples. So someone like the Liver King, right? Have you seen the Liver King?
No.
He's this crazy guy. He sells like these supplements. He eats raw meat and liver and all of this. What he wants people to believe is that the best way of living is to go back to our ancestral ways, which is hunting, eating, like, you know, working for your food, working out, being physically active, all of that. So then he produces content around that ideal, right? That is his big idea. And I think that more people need to think of, what do I want my audience to believe in order for them to eventually buy from me? So for example, right now, and this can be like changing and it can be an evolution. It's been DMs, it's been content. Right now, it's email and the power of mini launches. So I tell stories about how I just did a 6K weekend, how I did a 5K last week, a 4K the week before, all of this. I'm telling these stories of what I've done. So people are like, mini launches sound good, because I'm actually getting comments on my recent posts of people like, I've never considered email before. Now I'm going to, which is crazy because email's been around longer than you and I in this game. So it's really centering your content on a big idea and then telling stories that reflect that big idea. And now, as you're writing copy or doing video, sometimes it becomes difficult and you can kind of become cheap in connecting your story to the idea. Try to avoid that as much as possible. But then what you will do is, in your conversations with other people and your clients, you'll bring up your big idea and then they'll ask questions and you'll be able to get more ideas out of that. Because now all my content, I could post about email for freaking 2 months, because every single conversation just like this is about email. So I think that having a big idea and then showcasing stories that back up that big idea, that's my simplest form. And then testing. Like my content production right now is, I send myself a Slack message of like an idea I have, and then I go and like figure out how I can write it. I'm like, that's a smart way of thinking. Post it, and then like I go and write it. Like it can be very simple.
Actually, yeah, and it comes back to, and my students will resonate with this, because I tell my students all the time, if you really look at my content, like really look at it, I talk about the same two things all the time.
Yeah.
$5 ads and videos. That's all. That, like, if you go back at all my content, that's all I ever talk about is like video and $5 ads, and I just change the story around it. You know, one of the things that my mentor taught me, Nick Peterson, which, by the way, Jason, if you don't know Nick, you should know Nick. I think you would enjoy a lot of his stuff. And so whenever he creates content, and this has always stuck with me, because I'm like, damn, I was like, why is no one teaching this? That people, like, there are 4 different types of people that absorb content in different ways. And there are 4 A's: anthropological, like through human behavior, through aspirational, through stories, through analytical, through numbers, and through actionable how-to videos. Most people are only hitting on the how-to videos and
So good.
and analytical. And so now whenever I have one piece of content, I take it through those 4 lenses. I'm like, okay, cool. How can I make this aspirational? How can I make this anthropological by talking about why human behavior, makes people do things this way? And the way that, like, you just explained it, where it's just like trying to get people to believe this one idea. It's true, because it just makes content creation so much easier, because I think people are trying to do way too many content topics, if to
Way
put it
too many.
mildly.
Yeah. And like, I think that the how-to content is, a lot of people try to do that because it's like value is like, so let's be real. You're scrolling through Instagram and you see me post like how you can make $1 million in a year. And then you see Hormozy one slide down posting how to make $1 million in a year. You're not going to freaking listen to me. Like, why would you? But if, and then you phrase it like how I was able to make $1 million a year with just DMs. That's very interesting. Like, that's Jason's unique perspective, rather than I'm competing against everyone else. Is like, I like the shift of like how to versus how I is the best way to create content. And like we talked about at the start, kind of full circle. Like, that's exactly how you should do it.
Yeah, 100%. Because it's so funny, because and it's hard to knock off. you know, because it's your own personal thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anything that you would like to add? Because man, this was such a great conversation.
Yeah. I think probably one thing that I'm like really noticing now is especially because a lot of like our audience is probably on Facebook. That's probably the biggest place for us, is that I think that Facebook now is getting to be, especially personal profiles, is getting to be less and less of a top of funnel mechanism, right? So you kind of need some other way to bring in more traffic quicker. And I think that like combining either another platform, like we've been connecting on X, Twitter. Yeah. So like something that can be a little bit different, that can bring in new eyeballs. Because I've noticed like our sales slowed down at the start of the year because we were just recycling old leads rather than like bringing new ones in. Ads or some other top of funnel mechanism, I think, is important to add in. But you can also you don't have to be on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, all of this. Like right now, I don't post on Instagram. I stopped posting on TikTok, YouTube Shorts. I'm just on Twitter and Facebook. Like, do what works best for you, and it doesn't have to be everywhere. You don't fear missing out on the Instagram wave or shout outs or whatever BS people are slinging. Like, just focus on what works for you. That's probably the biggest takeaway.
That is a great takeaway. Like I recently just stopped doing my LinkedIn because I'm like, I hate this platform.
I hate LinkedIn.
It gives me anxiety to even like, you know, to even
so ugly.
And it's just so like spammy.
Yeah, it is. It's like every second post feels like an ad or like a fake story. It's just, yeah, it's BS.
Well, now you know where to find me and Jason if you want to have really great conversations. Like, you know, Jason said X, you know, formerly Twitter, it is actually one of my favorite platforms. And,
yeah,
you know, I'll leave you guys with this. Like, you know, the best place to test content is on Twitter. Like,
oh, without a doubt.
Because that's how you know, you say you Slack message yourself. I do that. You know, I do what Alex does is I test it. I get it thought out on Twitter before turning it into a Facebook post, and then the Facebook post becomes a video. And so it's just, you know, the best thing that I think I got from Alex Hormozi is like leverage. Like, don't ever do anything that you can't turn into something that you need to do already.
Without a doubt. And I think that like Twitter's a perfect example of it. Like that's just such a perfect way of thinking it is like literally if you follow me on Facebook, you're 2 days behind Twitter. And it used to be the other way around, but like I think that it's just those things test, because Facebook is a middle of funnel platform for me. So if I can make it work on top of funnel, which is Twitter, because I don't make any sales on Twitter. Well, a couple, like we made 50 grand off it, but nothing crazy, right? Facebook's more of that middle of funnel. So if it works on Twitter, then Facebook is going to doubly work, right? So yeah, I like that. It's a great way of looking at it.
Well, thank you so much for, I know I was the one drinking coffee, but thank you for having coffee with me.
No, of course. I finished mine early. I've been up since like 5 a.m. So